Shalom Aleichem, Erev Tov, good evening. We are back together in Mishpat Tzedek. Before we start, I want to just give a little bit of background for those who may be joining us this winter for the first time. Mishpat Tzedek is a shiur based out of, I'm sitting here in San Diego, California, but intended for those primarily the Shiviti Chevra in New York and anybody who lives on the East Coast time zone. That's the reason the shiur was given at this particular time. And B'ezrat Hashem, this year we will continue with our semi-regular visits to the New York area, in-person shiurim. And that should happen, God willing, every few months. We need to get back on track on that. If you want to be part of arranging that, making it happen, please feel free to let me know, B'ezrat Hashem. We are studying the laws of Sanhedrin in the writings of Rambam as part of an attempt to restore some dignity and knowledge of Jewish national law. The issues that really face the Jewish nation and how we govern a Jewish nation and what our sages and more importantly our Creator thought about how a Jewish nation should be run. The part that we're up to right now, we have done almost 2 years worth of introductions. And here people sometimes wonder, what is the point? We haven't yet cracked open chapter 1 of the Rambam's Laws of Sanhedrin. I'm here to answer that question and to answer that question the way that this Bet Midrash will answer the question. Twofold. The style of a Bet Midrash is that we are learning today. We learned together last week. We plan, B'ezrat Hashem, to learn together next week. Unlike the Western model of today's lecture is a self-contained piece where it starts in point A, ends in Z, and everything is supposed to be included in today's shiur, the style of Bet Midrash of our HaShamayim assumes that, one, you are going to be learning together forever. So we have forever to study Torah together. There's no need to force ourselves to cover more ground today than we need to, because that's what next week is for, and the next week, and the next week, and we're not rushing anywhere. We are here to learn Torah deeply, properly, and thoughtfully. The second part of this is it assumes that when we study, we bring knowledge to the table. So Torah is not intended to be a blind study of text, but rather something that fills in the whole narrative of Torah as you add in different teachings. The words of our sages, Divrei Torah ashirim b'makom acher. The words of the Torah are richer when you can read them in the context of something bigger. As such, that brings me to my third point, which is that something we find very often in the West is that when you come to study any material, the teacher becomes the expert, and the student is always surprised. Wow, I never knew that. Oh, wow, I never saw this piece before. Never knew what we were studying today. As such, very often in the West, the teacher will maybe give you a syllabus, but not tell you what it is that we're studying until you come to class. By our Chachamim, it's the exact opposite. How can we study the laws of Sanhedrin if we don't have a foundation to understand why the laws of Sanhedrin were written, which verses in the Torah they are written about, what the point of all of this Sanhedrin is? And that's why we've been spending the last years trying to understand the bigger picture of national law before we get stuck in the details. Before we know about why this or why not that, the bigger picture, why in the first place. And so we're busy today continuing to build the foundation, because once you have a solid foundation, everything you study afterwards begins to make sense. It would be of no use for me. Sure, we're jumping ahead. We're now in chapter 22 of Sanhedrin, but we didn't do chapter 1 yet. Because in order to understand chapter 1 properly, there are many pieces of knowledge that you should have about Sanhedrin before we get there. So to answer what a question that maybe nobody has asked overtly, but I know that sometimes people wonder, is why are we here today? We are here today to continue building the platform on which the study of the national law of Israel, the laws of Sanhedrin and Rabbeinu Rambam, are going to be built on. Now that we know that, let's open up chapter 22 of Rabbeinu Rambam's Mishneh Torah, Laws of Sanhedrin. If you're using a source sheet, it should be on page, it should be on source like 23 or 24, somewhere over there towards the end of the source sheet. In addition, I'd very much like to dedicate tonight's shiur to two people. First, for the Refuah Shlema of my dear friend, Abba Beryl Ben Fege, Shav Refuah Shlema, and only good news we should hear from him, B'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. And Lahavdil Elef Avei Avdalot, to separate between the two. The second, the Platt family Sefer Torah, which is behind me. It's the merit of the Platt family that we had our first Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah was donated to Leilu Nishmat Simi Vaknin Bat Chaviva Azulai, that we wish her neshama should have Anyan Gan Eden. B'ezrat Hashem Yisbarach. Today is her askar. B'ezrat Hashem. So last week we had discussed the prohibition of lo taguru mipnei ish, that it is forbidden for a judge to be afraid of the people who he's judging over. And if you recall, we spoke last week about the difference between a judge that does this privately and a judge that gets involved because he was appointed to lead the people. And that this particularly applies to a person who holds public office. Because one who holds a public appointment cannot excuse himself, I'm too afraid to get involved. If you're too afraid to get involved, then you shouldn't be involved in the first place. And that brings us today to halakha number 2 in chapter 22. Everyone see where I am? Anyone need help finding the place? If you go to your Google Classroom, there's an attachment there to safaria.org. It says Shemot 23. You want to click that link and then scroll all the way down. Can someone tell me the source that I'm looking for? I don't have it in front of me right now. Should be number 23, 24, 25, something over there.
22, I believe, sir.
22, is that Laws of Sanhedrin, chapter 22, law number 2?
That is correct.
Thank you so much. So you want to scroll all the way down to 22. Anyone else need help finding the place? Good. Okay. Says Rabbeinu Rambam, V'chen talmid shehaya yoshev lifnei rabo. And a student who is sitting before his rabbi. In which capacity does a student sit before his rabbi in judgment? I can't hear you?
The student made it onto the court.
Okay, the student made it onto the court. Okay, that would be one way to read this halakha. But that would be a student who's sitting with his rabbi. I'm going to argue that the Rambam does not mean that.
I think the rabbi is the court.
Okay, the rabbi and his 2 colleagues would be the bedin. So in which capacity is the student sitting here?
The student went to go to court,
Okay,
but he should not be going to someone who knows him.
so then that could not be the case. Good. It's also a good try. Who remembers how I described the bedin last week?
Last week you were talking about if they were related. And then,
Okay, that's why Baruch it can't be sitting. The student cannot be coming to the rabbi for judgment. I mentioned to you last week that the dayanim sit in the bedin, and before them are the plaintiffs, but then behind them are rows of students who are part of the yeshiva of the rabbi. They're there to study Torah. And the way you study Torah is by watching the Torah being ruled over. And they're a very integral part of, maybe not very, I think it's very integral. They're an integral part of the legal process. In the bedin, there are always 2 steps of law. In the 10th chapter of the Laws of Sanhedrin, we studied together already. Rabbeinu Rambam explains that there is a time of masa umatan, deliberation, legal deliberation, back and forth conversation, whether or not this person is innocent, whether they're guilty, whether they committed a crime, they did not commit a crime. And then there's the decision-making stage, which is called Shat Gmardin, the time of ruling the law. The students sit there as part of the deliberation, and they serve a very important part of asking questions, hearing answers, promoting conversation. And they sometimes even can be in a situation where their opinions are taken into consideration before the court, maybe even counted by the court. As we are going to discuss in the future, the way the Sanhedrin deliberates. So the students in this section of the Rambam's Mishneh Torah are sitting here because they are part of the legal process. It's maybe not the way in which we in the United States of America, for example, envision a court case. But the Dayanim are sitting together with their students, and the students are part of the process of law. So now, back to halakha number 2 in the laws of Sanhedrin 22. V'chen talmid shaya yoshev lifnei rabo. If there's a student that was sitting before his rabbi, not as a judge, not as a defendant, he's sitting there as a student who is learning in the rabbi's bedin. V'ra'a zechut le'ani v'chova le'ashir. And he sees that there is merit for the...
For the interruption, I just joined. Where are we reading?
Bibi Namin, chapter 22, law number 2. V'chova le'ashir, he sees merit for the poor person, and he sees that the wealthy person is guilty. Im shatak, if he chooses to remain silent, harei ze over mishum lo taguru mipnei ish. He violates the prohibition of have fear from no man, or have no fear from any man. Ve'al midvar sheker tirchak, and he violates the biblical prohibition also of distance yourself from falsehood. Okay, so let's set up a scenario. The student is sitting in the bedin, not as one of the dayanim, and his rabbi is presiding over the court case. And he sees that the poor person is innocent and the wealthy person is guilty, or he sees a claim that can be made for either party. And he chooses to remain silent. Why does he want to remain silent? It's not a trick question. Why does he want to remain silent? Why are you remaining silent? Yeah, leave it up to the professionals. I don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get involved.
Also respect for his rabbi.
Okay, also, maybe respect for the rabbis and the bedin. Good. For any reason, he violates 2 biblical prohibitions. 1, of having fear from any man, and 2, distancing himself from falsehood. He is allowing something false to happen. He could get involved, and he doesn't. By the way, the first one, he violates lo taguru mipnei ish, even if he's not afraid of anybody. How do you violate the prohibition of do not be afraid of any man if you're not afraid of any man? The reason he's not talking is not because he's afraid. So how does he violate that prohibition? There is a Tosefta. The Tosefta says, Lo taguru, like I told you last week from Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozek, the word gur is connected in some capacity to the Hebrew word le'ego, to gather in. When a person suppresses their thoughts that need to be heard, that person is guilty of a crime. You should not hold back. If you have something to say, you should say it. How you say it is a different story, but that you should say it. And here, maybe is similar to a concept, I'm not saying it's the same, similar to a concept we have by Nevi'im. There's a prohibition for a prophet, a koveshet nevuato. A prophet is not allowed to hold back, to suppress his prophecy. If you were given a way to think about something, it is your job to share it. It's nobody else's job to accept it, but your job is to let people hear it. Sometimes it's an occupational hazard. When you teach Torah in public, there are those people who don't like the Torah that you teach. I don't think anybody here may fall into that category, but there are people that don't sit here because they don't want to be here. They don't like the Torah that I teach. And so they'll say something like, well, that's just your opinion. Or, a lot of people disagree with you, or something to that effect. Of course it's my opinion. And of course there are people that disagree. Do you think I don't know that? But my job is not to expect that other people should obey what I say. That's not what I teach. Not why I teach what I teach. I teach what I teach. Maybe I'm paraphrasing the words of Harav Avraham Yitzchak Kohen Kook, the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of Israel. Harav Kook says, I don't speak because I have the courage to speak. I speak because I do not have the energy to remain silent. You can't hold it in all the time. There are things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put in your mind to teach to people. You should say it. The student who sits here, holding back what he needs to say, is doing something incorrectly. We're okay with tangents. After my introduction today, we're okay with taking tangents. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to zoom in for a moment, and this is particularly meaningful to me. It's been now over a year that my personal rabbi and teacher is no longer with us. And in analyzing this conversation between the rabbi and the student and thinking to myself, would I pipe up? Would I speak? Would I share in front of my rabbi? It's something that's very real to me. It's something I felt for very many years. And zooming into this particular halakha actually has a tremendous amount of wisdom. So if it's okay with you, let's leave Sanhedrin for just a little bit and go to the Rambam's laws of Torah study. It's not in your source sheet because I did not intend to teach that. So if you go to sefaria.org and click on halakha, I'm going to give you the instructions slowly, and if someone can post a link in the chat box for everybody else who maybe it's a little harder for them to catch up. Open up the section that says halakha. Find where it says Mishneh Torah. It should be the first category. That's the Rambam's Mishneh Torah. Scroll down to the book of Mada. The book of Mada should be the laws of Torah study, Talmud Torah. If you click on the laws of Talmud Torah, you want to be in chapter 5. So I'm in the 5th chapter of the Rambam's laws of Torah study. If someone can post it to the chat box, I would appreciate it very much. Thank you, David. Says Rabbeinu Rambam in the 5th chapter of the laws of Talmud Torah. כשם שאדם מצווה בכבוד אביו וביראתו. Just like a person is obligated to respect and honor their parents, respecting and honoring are not the same thing. In me, honoring is the wrong word. Yira is to have awe of the parent. כך הוא חייב בכבוד רבו ויראתו. He's also obligated to do the same for his teacher of Torah. ורבו יותר מאביו. And he must have this relationship with his teacher more than his father. שאביו הביאו לחיי העולם הזה, because his father brought him into this world. ורבו שלימדו חוכמה, and his rabbi who taught him wisdom, מביאו לחיי העולם הבא, brings him to the next world. We are not talking about any rabbi. Just like not all the people you knew as a child are your parents, not all the people who helped raise you are your parents. You had teachers, you had babysitters, you had all kinds of people in your life, kids program directors. They are not your parents. They're just people that are there in a supportive role to your parents. When Rabbeinu Rambam talks about a rabbi, he refers to somebody who most of your wisdom comes from this person. This is in halachic Hebrew, Rabbo HaMuvhak, your main teacher of Torah wisdom. So, our rabbis continue. I'm going to skip a few lines. לפיכך אמרו חכמים, therefore our rabbis taught us, כל החולק על רבו כחולק על השכינה. Somebody who argues with his teacher, with his rabbi, is as if he is arguing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Where do you see this in the Torah? It's giving you a source text of Bamidbar. What happened in Bamidbar? Korach. It says that Korach argued with Moshe and Aaron, and they were therefore fighting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. From here, our rabbis learn that arguing with Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen is like arguing in a similar capacity with HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
May I correct? Maybe argue is not the right word, maybe challenge.
Challenge. Okay, challenge. Why? But challenge is more positive, no?
Because no, argue mean, okay, you are allowed to argue and try to respect something. Korah did not argue with Moshe. He challenged his authority.
You're saying it's more than arguing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I argue. I'm allowed to argue with my rabbi to figure out if I'm right or wrong. But Korah basically said, you rule this way, I'm ruling different way.
Guys, you see the problem now is I can't. He can argue with his rabbi, but his rabbi can argue with him because he's my father. Baruch Hashem, Tom.
Can I tag on to what Rabbi Levi Senior was talking about?
Yes.
The idea that Korach, I think he's touching on a fine point over there. Korach wasn't just was fundamentally challenging Moshe's right to leadership. He wasn't challenging teachings per se to come to the truth. It was from a point of ego, challenging authority, saying that you don't deserve. You're not. Why should we listen to you? We are. I am also as authoritative as you are. All right, we can all be as authoritative. It's very different than having machloket in the sense for having a disagreement, being holek in the sense of like to debate something with your teacher, to come to a place of what's the emet, what's the truth, what's the proper way of doing things. That's still coming from a place of respect, not coming from a place of ego.
So let's put it this way. I'm going to agree to one thing, and that is that I am the last person to use the story of Korach to tell you that you're not allowed to argue with authority. Please, if I've been accused of anything in my life, it's arguing with authority. So that's definitely not. It's definitely not that. And to do a deep dive into what's actually happening in the story of Korach is fantastic. I think what we're experiencing right now is a difficulty with translation to Hebrew. I don't have an accurate English word for the word hacholek. I said argue. My father said challenge. Ben, you are now giving me a reading of what kind of challenge is it, from a place of authority, a place of pursuing wisdom. I just know the word hacholek. Cholek is from the root of.
Machloket.
Yeah, machloket also comes from the root of separating, splitting. Disagreement would be a good English word again, but it's going to have its flaws. Alf, I see you raising your hand. I don't know if you're adding something or you're just clicking the button.
Well, I was gonna say, can it be a certain surfing position in as the using the argument of the challenge to usurp the authority of the place?
Okay, maybe. I'm willing to say all of these things are true. I'm not. I'm just. I'm going to use the word. Yeah, tell me.
However you want to translate it, how can anything be comfortable to Moshe, since the issue with by history was he's having direct revelation from the Baruch Hu. So whatever you want to challenge him and separate anything, you're contradicting the Baruch Hu. That's different than any other rabbi later who's not having the right. So you challenge him, maybe just something you understand something different.
So you're saying it almost doesn't make sense to learn anything from Moshe Rabbeinu because Moshe Rabbeinu is a whole other category. This is a prophet of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him this. It's not that he came with some opinion, now his students are arguing with him. This is a divine command, and how could you argue? Or when you argue, you're inevitably arguing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu because he's telling you what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said.
And maybe Chodek is contradict. That's the right word.
To contradict. Okay, Chesky's question still stands. So we can do together a deep dive.
That question is a very good. It's a very good question in general on those rabbis' teachings on trying to derive that type of learning from the story of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's a fantastic question. Moshe Rabbeinu, like, it's apples and oranges to any other future leader that does not have as direct. I mean, one of our tenets of one of the Ikarim, so is that Moshe in Avio, there won't be another.
The Moshe Rabbeinu is different from everybody else.
That we never have. Exactly.
Good. Here I have to tell you. Here I have to tell you that I feel. I'm going to say this respectfully. that there maybe is a fundamental misunderstanding of when we learn things in this way. I don't think that our Chachamim are telling you something that they learned from the story of Moshe Rabbeinu and Korach. That our rabbis are doing something which is very classic to what our rabbis do. Okay? I'll give you a very good example. Now this is going to open up a whole other can of worms, and mamash, I did not intend to talk about this tonight. It says in the, we say in the end of Tefillah, right? You say, Talmidei Chachamim מרבים שלום בעולם, שאמר וכל בנייך לימודי אדוני, ורב שלום בנייך, אל תקרא בנייך, אלא בנייך. Torah scholars increase peace in the world. Don't say banaich. The verse says banaich, but you should say bonaich. Okay. So now, al tikeh halichot, ela halachot. Don't say halachot, rather read halichot. But it doesn't say halichot, it's halachot. It doesn't say bonaich, it says banaich. What do you want from my life? Our rabbis, and if you wish to see Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato has in a book of Ikarim, Torah Shabbat, okay? Our rabbis have an oral tradition in their hands. And they have a desire. The oral tradition stands on its own. But they have a desire, whenever possible, to connect between the written law and the oral law. Our rabbis have a rule. Torah scholars increase peace in the world. Where do we learn it from? Nowhere. It's part of the oral law. But can we find it somewhere in the written? Yeah, if you twist around the word, you can find it there. Sometimes this is intended even just as a method of memory, to remember something based on something else. Rabbi Abe Faor, for example, she doesn't do well, once explained in one of his shiurim, when Cain and Hevel were fighting with each other, Chamim bring a whole machloka. They were fighting about ownership of property, and the truth is, says Rabbi Abe Faor, has nothing to do with that. What does that have to do? Of course, that's not what they're fighting about. Rather, it's a very common teaching method that our rabbis use a story that exists in the Mikra in order to teach us a halakha that's not necessarily connected to it at all. And therefore, this is not necessarily something that we learn from Moshe Rabbeinu, rather a teaching that we have embellished onto Moshe Rabbeinu. What I'm saying could be correct in this particular case, it could be not. I didn't do a deep dive here in this halakha today to tell you all the sources of where Chachamim got these halakhot from. But I think that from this general rule, you can maybe make peace with many things that our Chachamim say that don't seem to fit so smoothly into the biblical story they are embellishing their teaching onto. Because they are not intending to interpret the biblical verse, they are intending to teach you a rabbinic policy, a rabbinic value, a rabbinic teaching, and they're trying to help you remember it or trying to connect it in a very weak capacity to a written text. If you think about this more and more, many of the questions you have on things you have studied in the oral law will simply disappear, because you will realize that by understanding the purpose, they're not actually doing what you think they're doing. I'm not telling you here, just telling you like that. Why did I read this halakha to you? I read it to you because possibly the student in the laws of Sanhedrin is afraid to, my father used the word, to contradict. Some of you said disagree. Some say to challenge. Whatever word you want. He's afraid to challenge, disagree, contradict his rabbi in the Bedin because there's a prohibition against arguing with one's chacham, one's teacher. What is he supposed to do? Look at halakha bet. Ezehu cholek al rabo. Who is considered one who is cholek on his teacher? Zeh shekovea lo midrash. It is somebody who opens for himself a midrash. What does it mean to open a midrash? Essentially, he says, I don't belong anymore to your institution. I have my own. I'm my own teacher now. I am no longer obligated to follow anything you taught me. V'yoshev v'doresh u'mlamed shelo birshut rabo. And he sits and he expounds and he teaches and rules halachot without the permission of his teacher.
This is even more than disagreement. Because
Yeah, of course.
no, what?
Yeah, you're right. He's cholek. Cholek means
Moshe Rabbeinu is a Navi. Hanukkah is a Navi.
okay. That's what Chesky said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. V'Rabo kayam, and his rabbi is still alive. V'af al pi sherabo b'medina acheret. This is true even if his rabbi is in a different country. V'asur le'adam lehorot b'fnei rabo le'olam. And it's forbidden for a student to teach, to rule halacha in front of his rabbi ever. V'chol hamoreh halacha b'fnei rabo, and anyone who rules a halacha before his rabbi, chayav mita, is liable for the death penalty. Rambam continues, halacha number 3. Haya beno uven rabo shenem asar mil. If there was between him and his rabbi 12 mil. A mil is 2,000 amot. They say somewhere around a kilometer today. I don't know exactly the measurements. V'sha'alo adam dvar halacha. And a person asked him a halachic question. Mutar le'ashiv. He's allowed to answer. So the distance would be about a kilometer away. Ulafrish min ha'isur. But to separate a person from doing wrong. Afilu bifnei rabo mutar lehorot. Even when he's before his rabbi, he can rule that way. Kitzad, for example. Kagon shera adam oseh devar ha'asur. He sees a person violating halacha, doing something forbidden. Why? Why would a person do something forbidden? There's 2 reasons. Mipnei shelo yada bi'isuro, because he doesn't know it's forbidden. Or mipnei risho, or because he knows it's forbidden, but he's evil. Yesh lo la'afrisho. You are allowed to, even in the presence of your teacher, say, don't do it. V'lomar lo, davar ze asur, it's forbidden to do this. V'afilu bifnei rabo, even before his rabbi. V'af al pi shu natan lo rabo reshut. And even if his rabbi has not given him permission. Because listen to the last sentence. I brought you here for the last sentence. Shekol makom sheyesh chilul Hashem. Because in any situation where there is potential for desecration of God's name, en cholkin kavod larav. We do not give respect to the rabbi. Meaning, if I have to choose between respecting my rabbi or respecting my God, I respect my God first. This should be obvious to everybody. If I have to choose between respecting my parents or respecting my God, I respect my God first. And therefore, in a situation where my rabbi is there and someone is doing something wrong, and I say, I can either be quiet out of respect to my rabbi, or I can speak up out of respect to my God, I speak up out of respect to my God. And this is what should be in the mind of the student in chapter 22 of the laws of Sanhedrin, who's sitting in the Bedin. He has to have in his mind, listen, if I'm quiet out of respect to my rabbi, that's a respectful thing to do, but I can't be quiet because my Creator is here also. And my Creator requires me to say what is on my mind. B'mei dvarim amurim, let's finish the halacha just for the sake of finishing the halacha. When does this apply? B'davar shenikro nikra. When this is a happenstance. It doesn't happen every day, it's a random occurrence. But to establish himself as a teacher, to sit and to rule halachot for everyone who asks. Even if he is on one side of the world and his rabbi is on the other side of the world. He is forbidden from ruling halacha ad sheyamut rabo, until his rabbi dies. That's pretty harsh. Don't worry. There's 6 more words. Ela im ken natal reshut merabo, unless he received permission from his teacher. When are you allowed to teach Torah while your teacher is still alive? When your teacher has given you permission to teach Torah. From here, you may understand, I don't remember where I wrote, or maybe my wife wrote once in an article about the modern semicha. Now, modern semicha is not a real semicha. What's the point of ordaining somebody? There is no Sanhedrin, there is no unbroken chain of semicha. It doesn't work that way. But in the Ashkenazi community, for example, semicha was very important. Likely, the concept of semicha that is found there is not so much a semicha, but it is written permission from one's teacher that this student is now allowed to teach Torah with my permission. Probably that's the most similar to what it is meant to do. And by the way, Halacha Gimel Rambam finishes, "V'lo kol mi shemet Rabbo mutar lo yeshev lo b'Torah." Not everybody whose rabbi dies now he can sit and teach Torah. Ela im ken haya talmid shegi'a l'hora. Only when he is a student who is worthy of such a thing. So the rabbi dying doesn't automatically make you the next rabbi. It just makes you a person with a dead rabbi. Yeah, you have to be a student who is worthy of teaching Torah when you choose to teach Torah.
What would be the case of Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan? I mean, he was his rabbi first.
But they were arguing, like we said before, they were arguing within a. Oh, you're fine. Hold on. My mother asked a good question. Let's look at Halacha number 9. Go to Halacha number 9. So many halachot here that nobody knows. People don't keep. I should tell you why people don't know the halachot of respecting Torah scholars. I have an answer why people don't know the halachot of kibbut hamlechamim. Is because rabbis usually don't teach it. How would it look if a rabbi taught his students how to respect him? It looks a little bit arrogant. And so most of the time, just like parents usually don't teach their kids the laws of kibbut avim, maybe they rely on the school to do that or somebody else to do that. The same thing here. I make it a point whenever I travel to another rabbi's community, to do whatever I can to teach the laws of respecting Torah scholars in those communities. So those people should know how to respect the rabbi. First and foremost, how I respect the rabbi. By the way, we had a situation. Rabbanit was in Seattle, Washington with me. We did a Shabbaton there. We're doing one again this year, B'ezrat Hashem. And the rabbi, who was a dear friend of mine, we learned together by Haraperet. He should live and be well. God should bless him with long life and good health. Rabbi David Ben Shlush. He asked my wife to give the Shabbat morning derasha in the Beit HaKnesset. And so my wife got up to give the derasha, and she was made it abundantly clear that she doesn't want to replace the rabbi. So she kept trying to get him to give the derasha. He insisted, okay, that's how you respect the rabbi, by listening. But the way the Beit HaKnesset are set up is that the rabbis sit on these big thrones, like on the side of the Aron Kodesh. It's not a room like this one. It's a big room, huge Beit HaKnesset. They have these thrones the rabbis sit on, the senior rabbi, the regular rabbi. And the Rabbit had a very hard time with turning her back to Talmid Chacham. We, in our tradition, we don't turn our backs to Talmid Chacham. Even when we walk away from a Torah scholar, we walk backwards. Like when you walk away from the Beit HaKnesset, we walk backwards. When I was in Baltimore, in the yeshiva, the Persian Jews were very particular about this. They would go to a rabbi shit and they would walk away backwards. It's a kavod. It's a sign of respect. So, people don't know these halachot, so I'm leaving them. But my mother asked the question. Let's look at halakha number 9. Ra'at rabo over ad divrei Torah. If a person sees his rabbi violating the words of the Torah, why would a rabbi violate the words of the Torah in front of his students?
For the sake of life.
Okay, in that case, it would be warranted. It wouldn't be a violation of the Torah. Meaning, I'm telling you, don't tell me what we said before. It's because he doesn't know. If he doesn't know, then he's not a rabbi. And don't tell me it's because he's an evil person. If he's an evil person, you cannot study Torah from him. So which reason would a rabbi be breaking the Torah before his students?
It's from the student's perspective.
Oh, the student thinks he's breaking the Torah. Okay, that could be. Most likely scenario, the student maybe misunderstood something. And he's asking a question. But let's say more. Let's say he's actually breaking halakha. Why?
Let's say he's trying to avoid breaking a bigger halacha.
Okay, in which case he would have to explain himself to the student. You're right, but that could be another example. Similar to Chesky, it would be the rabbi would have to owe an explanation.
As Mazoma posted in the chat, he's human and sometimes people make mistakes.
Very good. Nanachama, forgive me, I don't read the chat when I teach because if you've seen my room, you are sitting all the way on the other side of the room from me, so I can't actually see what people write in the chat box. We are going to deal with the reality that people are human beings. And human beings make mistakes. I tell you a story that happened to me once. I'm not embarrassed of the story. Maybe other people are. I'll tell you a story. Many years ago it happened to me. When I was much younger, like I'm very old today. I was leading tefillah. It could have been Asara B'Tevet. It could have been Ta'anit Esther. I don't remember which. It was one of the smaller fast days. And it was very early in the morning. I was leading tefillah. My voice was parched. And I asked one of the young boys in the community, it was Itai Seven. He's not so young anymore. Now he's married, Baruch Hashem, lives in Israel. But for those of you who know Itai, it was Itai. He was maybe just after his Bar Mitzvah, maybe. Maybe even before. I don't remember. Maybe Rachel remembers. I don't remember exactly what year I came here or not compared to the Bar Mitzvah. Must be afterwards. And I said, please bring a cup of water. So he brought me a cup of water.
I think you came here 2012, and it's probably 2013.
13. Okay, good. So it was somewhere in that period, in that kufam. And so I asked, please bring a cup of water. And he brought me water. And I pick up the water, and I said a bracha, and I said, wait a second. It's a fast day today. Itai, why did you bring me a cup of water? And he said, because he told me to bring. I figured if the rabbi asked for a cup of water, then must be he knows what he's doing. That's a lot of emunah. I was just thirsty, and I forgot. Mamash, I'm embarrassed. I forgot it was a fast day. And what can I do? At the end of the day, you can make a mistake. So the right thing to do would be to say, hey, Rabbi, it's a fast day today. You can't drink water. Now, maybe you could say, listen, I'm taking medication. Maybe there's a reason why you drink. Fine. But the question has to be asked. So now Rabbeinu Rambam wants to know, how do you ask this question? You see the rabbi violating Torah. Omer lo, he tells him, very similar to what Rabbeinu Rambam writes by a father. Okay? You say, Limadetanu Rabbeinu kach v'kach. Limadetanu Rabbeinu, Rabbi, you taught us so-and-so. As a question, didn't you teach me that you can't drink on a fast day? Rabbi, didn't you teach us in the laws of Shabbat you can't do that? Rabbi, didn't you teach us? Why are you asking this way? To show respect. Not to embarrass, to show respect, to give a way to wiggle. Yes, I did teach you that, except for when, oh, you're right. Wow, I can't believe it slipped my mind. But you ask in a way that is respectful. The same thing with your parents. Rambam writes that by a father, that when you see a father violating the words of Torah, don't you know, or didn't you teach me? You ask a question. Aren't we not allowed to do this on Shabbat? You don't say, hey, we can't do it on Shabbat. Aren't we not allowed to do it? You ask in such a way that you still are telling them not to do it, but respectfully. So back to our student. Our student likely is in this situation where he's torn between respecting his rabbi and standing up for the truth. And though the obligation ultimately is to stand up for the truth, there also remains an obligation to stand up for the truth respectfully. I respectfully disagree. How do you respectfully disagree? Like this. There is an Ashkenazi commentary on Pirkei Avot written by Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin. Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin is the student of, I don't have the book here, it's at home. He's a student of the Gaon of Vilna, Alav Shalom. Yes? Sometimes people, they come from a reality of they're Hasidim, the Gaon of Vilna is a bad guy. I have no skin in this game. And I know when I first married my wife and I quoted the Gaon of Vilna, that was not a pretty night. I did not realize there are still some Hasidim that are like, they will never budge from this. Okay, history is what history is. I can't fix history. I can tell you, I am not involved in the story at all. The Gaon of Vilna had a student, Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin. Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin has a famous book that he wrote, Nefesh HaChaim. Very interesting work. Nefesh HaChaim is like the house of study of the Gaon of Vilna's response to the Tanya of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. If you've studied both of those works, you may find some interesting overlaps. They don't think that they overlap, but they overlap a lot. And there's some things where they fundamentally disagree. Sometimes, by the way, people, a few weeks ago, a video went on from me. People have this, he hates this group of people, doesn't like that. There's nobody in the world that I hate. Mamash, hate is not a very strong word. I come from a Beit Midrash in which we study everybody's books. everybody's books. We also reserve the right to argue with everybody's books. And for most people, they don't know what to do with that dynamic. Because if you study somebody's book, you must think it's important. I do think it's important. That's why I'm studying it. I also think that it's important to be able to argue with anything that you study. You have to remain critical when you study things. And I see that in the world we live in today, if you criticize a group of people, it must mean that you hate them. Because how could you love them if you criticize them? But it's such a nonsensical attitude to have. And
Most
which
people criticize without studying at all.
okay, that's even better. These are the Amar. It's somebody who criticizes doesn't even know anything. I have the right to argue with everybody respectfully, but I argue with them. That doesn't mean that I don't care. I cared enough to read their book. I cared enough to engage with their ideology, and I fundamentally disagree. I'm allowed to. In a world in which you cannot argue, then it's dangerous to study books. It's very dangerous to study things if you're not allowed to maintain your freedom of thought. So I don't expect other people to understand it. I expect you to understand it, though. If you hear me quote anybody, you know, wow, where did that come from? It doesn't matter. It's not Harav Peretz in one of his books once quoted a certain Talmid Chacham. I was very happy. Wow, Harav Peretz, you agree with that Talmid Chacham? I said, actually, I have no clue who he is. So what do you mean? You quote him as your book? He said, I once saw something that he said, and I really liked it, so I wrote it down in my notebook. I know nothing about the man, but it was true what he said in that particular instance. Could be that you should learn nothing else from him. I don't know. So the Gaon of Vilna student, Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin, he has a book, Nefesh HaChaim. There's an interesting rabbi somewhere here in California, Silicon Valley. His name is, don't hold me to it, I think his name is Rabbi Avraham Frankel. I think so. I don't know him. He wrote a book on the Nefesh HaChaim. He translated Nefesh HaChaim. He also wrote a book called Nefesh HaTzimtzum, in which he takes 4 major Kabbalistic ideologies and tries to show you they all agree with each other. That whether you agree with the conclusion or not doesn't matter. I found it impressive that a person is Talmid Chacham of the caliber that they can try to, they can write a serious book like that. Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin wrote another book, maybe a little less popular, called Ruach Chaim. Ruach Chaim is a commentary on Pirkei Avot. It's a lot of Kabbalah in there, but on Pirkei Avot he writes, "Veheve mitabek be'afar raglehem." That you should sit at the feet of Torah scholars is usually how they translate that. But he translates "Veheve mitabek." What does it mean? Mitabek.
Very good.
Vayivater Yaakov. Very good. That's the pasuk. Vayivater Yaakov levado, v'yavek ish imo ad alot hashachar. Yaakov Avinu has a fight with an angel until dawn, and the angel touches his gid and Hashem. From then, we don't eat that part of the. You know what we're talking about in the Torah. V'yavek, to struggle with somebody. So, says Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin, the meaning of this is not that you should sit at the dust of the Torah scholars' feet, rather that you should struggle with the Talmidei Chachamim. But what's the caveat?
Raglehem, with respect, humility.
Very good. Ba'afar raglehem. I'm arguing while sitting at your feet. I'm still your student. I'm arguing with you, but I'm doing so in a way that is respectful. There's an obligation to argue with Talmidei Chachamim respectfully, not to sit passively at their feet. The words literally mean to argue at the dust of their feet. So, in general, this relationship between a rabbi and a student is very deep. If I'm anyways here, well, anyways, it's the time that it is right now, so we're going to do what we can do today. If you look towards the end of this chapter, in Laws of Talmud Torah, Rabbeinu Rambam, in law number 12, he says, Keshem she'atalmidim chayavim b'chvod harav. Just like the students are obligated in the respect of their rabbi, kach harav tzarich lechabed et talmidav. So too the rabbi must respect the students. Respect, we don't mean like respect as in stand up there. Respect as in to treat them with respect. Ulekarvan, and to bring them close. Kach amu chachamim. This is what our sages said. Yi kevod talmidecha chaviv alecha keshel chaverecha. The honor of your students should be as precious to you as that of your colleagues, of your friends. וצריך אדם להיזהר בתלמידיו ולאהובן. In modern Hebrew, you would say it differently. And a person must be careful with his students and to love them. Shehen habanim hamehanin ba'olam hazeh v'na'olam haba. Because they are the students, they are the children. The students are the children who give benefit to the rabbi in this world and in the next world. I was very moved when I was in Yerushalayim for Harav Peretz's first askara. And mamash, I was at 4 or 5 askarot with them. And every single time they asked me to speak. It was not something I took lightly. I don't know his children over all the years. I met them only right before he passed away. Some of them I knew a little earlier, but they kept repeating this pasuk. At-talmidim hem habanim. You are a son also. Over and over and over and over. You are also a son of our Father. It was a very moving thing for me to be included as part of the family, though I'm not family. By the way, they put their money where their mouth is. Not money, but I'm also in the family WhatsApp group, and I get all the happy occasions and everything else. It's something I don't take lightly. That's why I use the word when I say the Shiviti family. Because what is a family? How could it be a family? In such that we are all related to each other because we study wisdom together. And that may be something that other people don't understand, but for those of you that are here and you've been here, and you've been in the Kehillat, and you know that the feeling is not just of a random group of people that study together. And says the Rambam in Halacha Yud Gimel, "Hatalmidim mosifin chokhmat harav umarchivin libo." The students, they add wisdom to the rabbi and they broaden his heart. Amru chachamim. Our rabbis tell us, Harbe chokhmah lamadati. I learned much Torah. Michaverai yoter mirabotai. I learned more from my colleagues and from my teachers. Umitalmidai yoter mikulam. But from my students, I learned the most. Uchshem she'etz katan badikat hagadol. And just like a small match lights a lot of wood, kach talmid katan mechaded et harav. So too, a small student sharpens his great rabbi. Until through his questioning, the student's questioning of the teacher, the rabbi's great wisdom comes out by the challenge, the motivation of his students. Rabbeinu Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim, section 1, halacha 7, goes to the meaning of the word to give birth to somebody else. And Rabbeinu Rambam mentions there that a student is considered being born from his teacher, because the teacher taught him wisdom. If you want to look, you can look Moreh Nevuchim, section 1, chapter 7. But maybe, if we're anyways running around the Mishneh Torah, I want to show you one halakha that I don't think most people know. It's an important one, and it's connected to everything we're talking about here. If we go to the laws of murder, so laws of murder are going to, if you go back to halakha, Mishneh Torah, you're going to look for the laws of murder under nizakim. Maybe they translate it as damages. If somebody finds the link, please send it. I want you to go to the 7th chapter of the laws of murder. Someone can send a link, maybe they did already. It's the laws of murder, or murderer. Maybe they would rotzeach ushmirat nefesh. I don't know how to translate to English. It's under the book of Nizikim. Look. So you have Tara, Nizakim, Kinyan, right there in the middle. Nizakim would be translated as damages. They're going to write damages. Okay.
Which chapter?
7. Okay. Tell me what you know about cities of refuge. Ir Miklat. What do you know about them?
Which where murderers go to be protected from the relatives of the person that they murder, whether intentionally or accidentally. And if it's an intentional murder, they run there until their trial. I think they still do run there even if it's an intentional murder initially. But if they're found guilty of intentional murder, then they are obviously no longer privy to the protections of an immigrant. But it's where the Goel Adam is no longer allowed to have no longer has legal authority to kill them.
Okay, very good. Tell me what you know about where these are, these cities of refuge.
Well, they're intentionally meant to be scattered throughout Am Yisrael, so they're all the cities of the Levium, and they're meant to be at various places throughout the nation.
Very
The
good.
first three located that the Moshe Rabbeinu set up or was supposed to escape me. Remember, there's one in Abraham Yarden, and then there's two.
Okay, but there should be some Chumashim might have maps. I don't have in front of me a Chumash on a map, but they might. Tell me also who lives in the cities of refuge.
The Quantum and Levium.
Kohanim and Leviim. Very good. And the people, they come there with their families, correct? So they don't come there alone. They run away there with their family because they don't want their family to be killed. And they also, to keep the family unit together, have a shiur somewhere online about the modern jail system in the cities of refuge as an alternative. We'll get there when we talk about the police force and the Rambam Sanhedrin. But for right now, I think that's a very good summary. Right, Arei Miklat, cities of refuge. Let's look in the first chapter of 7th chapter, first halakha. Says Rabbeinu Harambam. Talmid shegala le'arei miklat. A student who was exiled to the city of refuge. He unintentionally killed somebody. Give me an example. That one thing. An unintentional murder. Give me an example.
He's hitting an axe when the handle flies off.
Very good. Classic case. He's chopping a tree down. He wants to make a fire at his home. The handle flies, the metal piece, I don't know what you call it, flies off the handle and kills somebody. He's not officially guilty of murder, but he may have a family member of that guy who wants to take revenge. This man runs away to a city of refuge where he is protected from the other person's Goel Hadam, the redeemer of the blood. So the student who runs away to a city of refuge, it's an exile. He has to leave society and go live somewhere else. Maglin rabo imo. The Bedin exiles the rabbi with him. Why? Why does the rabbi have to go to exile with his student?
To keep learning.
Very good. Aselo kadesh yichye. It says shenemar v'chai. It says you have to live. Aselo kadesh yichye. You have to exile him in a way that he can live. V'chaye baalei hachochma. I wish this could be a bumper sticker. But being that it's about wisdom, you can't turn wisdom into graffiti, so it cannot be a bumper sticker. V'chaye baalei hachochma. Uvakesheha belo talmud. And the life of a person who is a person of wisdom and people who pursue wisdom. So the life of wise people and those who pursue wisdom, below Talmud, without the study of wisdom, kemitah chashuvah is considered like death itself. People who understand the beauty of study, of knowledge, of wisdom, of Torah, when they stop studying, it feels like death. V'chen harav shegana, and therefore the same is true with a rabbi who is exiled. Maglin yeshivato imo, we send his whole yeshiva into exile with him. So in the Torah, when our Chachamim talk to us about a rabbi and a teacher, what kind of rabbi or teacher are we talking about? The kind that would go to exile with you. The kind that you would go to exile with. The kind that if you said, I have one deserted island to be stranded on, that's where I'm going. I know I'm talking now to the people in New York, but you should know, my people in San Diego, I live in a really complicated city. The most complicated part of living in San Diego, it is ridiculously expensive to live here. Mamash, like, not in a normal way. And the people in my kehillat are not all united by the common bond that they are wealthy. I wish that on everybody, but it's not what unites everybody together. Rather, the knowledge that this is the kind of group of people that says, I have many places I can live. It would be more affordable for us to live there. We'd be able to own bigger houses, or maybe even own a house. Many of us don't. And we'll be able to afford A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all kinds of things. School tuition is not so expensive. Grocery, whatever calculations you have. But the feeling is, if the place that I can get Torah is there, then I would rather live differently than I would ideally live, because the most ideal purpose of life is the pursuit of Torah. And I think that I'm always humbled by the people that are here, especially those who it's maybe more challenging for them to be here. Sometimes their children don't live here, their children live somewhere else. There are all kinds of calculations why a person has, and I'm not here. I know, I told you in the beginning, I know I'm speaking to many people that are not here in person. But to those that make that kind of jump, I used to tell Harav Peretz all the time. He said, what would you do if you came back to Israel? What would you do? I said, I would be willing to drive your car back and forth to the yeshiva. That's what I'll do. Why? Because in the moments that I've spent sitting with Harav Peretz in a car, I learned more Torah than I learned many hours sitting alone on my own. This connection between a chacham and their student is very deep. Now that you've had this whole piece, let me read with you just two more halachot before we call it a night, so I can finish this section, and then next week we could do something else. Go back with me, please.
Did you say that the whole yeshiva will go to Imiklat with him?
Yes.
Why the whole yeshiva? It involves many students and maybe many families.
Who's going to study Torah with him?
I don't know. Who's that by him? He needs contemporaries. Okay. Wow, that really is a very broad effect, doesn't it?
A huge effect. But Marlene, let me explain this. Can I give you a mashal nemadav? Let me explain the example, possibly.
Yes, please.
You know, one of the hostages who was taken by Hamas, Yimach Shema, was speaking about how when they told him that they murdered his wife and his children, and every time he would cry about it, they would make fun of him. They say, why do you care? Just get another wife. Get another kid. What's the big deal? You'll make more new kids. Why are you so emotional about this topic? Now, who can tell a person, get a new wife, big deal? Who can say that? Well, they would argue they have souls. They argue they're superior religious beings than us. How could they say such a thing?
For them, they don't have connected, meaningful relationships. So for them, they're expendable.
Very good.
It's a big deal.
It's obvious to me, like I mean exactly what you said. It's obvious to me that for them, a wife and children are expendable. In their value system, a wife and a child is no big deal. What's the big deal? Get a new one. Get another one. Make new ones. I'm going to tell you a story now. You're not going to appreciate the story. I once sat with somebody in my wife's extended family. My wife and I sat with them. And they were challenging a lot of what we do here in this Beit Midrash. It was after a Shiviti New York event. We sat there. And I told this person, I said, listen, you could mock your sister. No, I can't tell you. It doesn't matter. I said, you can mock your sister's life choices all you want, that she chose to move to San Diego, that she chose to have a kehillat here. You can say all you want. But I promise you that the moment your children run away from the community, they're running to your sister. So we're here for a reason that maybe you don't even understand. And then we spoke about children. And this person related to my wife said something that I wish I never heard, because I've never been able to respect them again. She said, our system is not perfect. There are many children that fall through the cracks. But that's why we have so many of them. Because for the few that are going to fall through the crack, the majority are going to be just fine. And I said to myself, a human being that could say about their own children that a few can fall through the cracks, big deal, is a person who does not share in any capacity, any kind of value that I have towards family. And this is something that it needs to be said. I can't say that all people from that world feel the same way, but that particular person, I can't look at the person the same ever since. When we talk about rabbis and students and teachers, if I'm speaking, I said something now maybe negative about, clearly, my wife's family is Hasidic. Let me say something positive because it fits it completes the story. I don't think that American Jews understand the connection to a rabbi the way that, for example, Hasidim do. And I'm not telling you that Hasidim's connection to the rabbi is healthy. It's not healthy. But I'm telling you something important. It's something to understand. When Rabbi so-and-so, he's the Rebbe, my wife's Rebbe is a good example, decides to leave Borough Park and move to Israel, you better believe he doesn't do it alone. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families move with him. Because the thought of staying behind without our teacher, and I'm not telling you the Rebbe of a Chassidut is a teacher, it's not a comparable model, I'm talking about the connection, is what's the point of living here? You would say, just get another rabbi. Go to another synagogue. If this synagogue closes, you'll go to the next one. Shabbat before Pesach this year, I was giving a drasha here, Shabbat Agadol. And, 2 times a year I speak here and I ask guests not to come. One of those Shabbat before Pesach. And I said, this year maybe it wasn't practical. Was it this year that it fell out on Saturday night? Yeah, so maybe that's why we had some guests here. They weren't guests like you guests. Guests not from my community, guests. Not from my broader community either. I said, we built this Kehillat here because if this place closes, we don't go to another synagogue to pray. We're going to go pray at home, in our garage, in our living room. This is the Kehillat that is built only for people that have, this is the only place they would go. And so when we talk about a rabbi who goes to exile and his students follow him, if you were in my class yesterday on Sunday, and I spoke about Rabbi Shimon ben Shatach and Rabbi Yoshua ben Parachia and the yeshivot that exiled to Alexandria, and Jesus being in that yeshiva, and I spoke about that yesterday. You could only understand that model of you can't get another rabbi. You can't get another yeshiva. You don't get another community. There's the one that you're a part of, and there's nothing else. And that relationship, if you haven't yet found it, then you're still dating and you're not actually married somewhere. And it's okay to date, and you date, and people don't judge people who date, and you date here, you date there, but at a certain point you have to settle down somewhere. And I'm going to pitch this there, that those of you who have found wisdom, you have found friends with which to study Torah together, don't take this group of people lightly. It's not a thing that you should take lightly. If this group goes somewhere, you should go that somewhere also. Because at the end of the day, when I choose who do I want to live on this earth with, it's the people that are going to get me into the next world. That's who I want to live on this earth with. All the other things, the property and the land and the money and the jobs and the comfort and all of that, it's wonderful. But it pales in comparison to a person who understands the assignment. I understand that I have a limited time on this earth. I have a destiny. I have somewhere that I'm supposed to get to, and I can only do it with the right group of people. And everything else is just a commentary. So let's finish here. Laws of Sanhedrin, chapter 22. We're back in law number 2. So back in the first source that we started. I know what time it is. We're going to end in a couple of minutes. Uminayin ledayan shelo yoshiv talmid bur lefanav. And from where do we know that a dayan, the rabbi, the judge, cannot put in that group of students that sit there a student who is a bur? What is a bur? So he's saying nothing, like it's empty.
Nothing goes in, nothing goes in.
In England, wouldn't they say float?
But look, okay, I don't mean bur as in the English bur, and the Hebrew bur. What is a bur? Okay, let me do this with you. Yeah, we have a few minutes. Okay, let's open up if you can. Okay, so
Ignorance?
what is the difference in a bur? What's the difference in a bur and an am haaretz?
I once heard over Abe Fahor explain it that a board was someone who doesn't know his place. Like he's an ignoramus, he doesn't know his place, he speaks whenever he wants, he doesn't. I'm Haaretz to be a normal good guy, even a good religious Jew, he's just not so knowledgeable. But he knows his place.
Oh, okay, so obviously his Torah is from the Rambam. If you look with me, let's jump one more place tonight before we finish here. One more place tonight. If you open up and somebody who's good with Sefaria and can send a link to the chat box, I would appreciate it. If you go to the Mishnah and you find Masechet Avot, they call Perkei Avot, chapter 5. So Mishnah Avot, chapter 5. Let me know when someone posted in the chat box. Thank you again to David. Okay. Mishnah number, in my edition it says number 6. Famously, Perkei Avot has all kinds of numeration systems. Says the Mishnah, Shiv'a devarim begolem. There are 7 character traits in a golem. Golem is a wonderful word in Hebrew. It's not a positive word. Okay, let's just say it that way. I don't know what does the English in front of you say a golem is.
Claude.
I don't know what a clod is. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, Shiva devarim begolem v'shiva bechacham. There's 7 character traits about a golem and 7 character traits about a chacham. So a golem is opposite of a chacham. Okay. Chacham eno medaber lifnei mishu gadol mimenu bechokma. A wise person never speaks before somebody who is wiser than them. Ve'eno nichnas letoch divrei chavero, and he never speaks, doesn't interrupt his fellow's speech. Ve'eno nivhal lehashiv, and he's not quick to answer questions. He listens to the question. Sometimes we do this here. I'll ask the question, but I'll answer it. Before you answer the question, think about the question. Don't just shoot from the hip. If we're asking a question in the Beit Midrash, there must be that there's a deeper reason for why the question is being asked. Listen, think about it first, then answer it. Shoel ka'inyan umeshiv kahalacha. He asks things that are relevant, and he answers on point, meaning correctly. Omer al rishon rishon val acharon acharon. He answers things in order. The first questions first, the last questions last. Where did you see that in this last week's parasha?
In the interrogation of Eliezer, he went to Betuel.
Yeah, very good. What do we say? What do we see there?
Eliezer answers them in the order of the questions that was asked.
If I'm not mistaken, there's a Midrash of our HaShamayim that says that that's also what happened with Rivka. The Rivka also answered Eliezer in order. אבא לא שומע אותך, מה אמרת?
Eliezer asked the flood, if you place to him or to sleep, you have, can you give me water? That's it.
Very good. She answered him, Al Rishon Rishon, Val Acharon Acharon. We see that he recognized in her wisdom because of that. Very good. ועל מה שלא שמע, אומר לא שמעתי. And about things that he doesn't know, he never heard about, he says, I haven't heard. Don't say nonsense. If you don't know, don't speak. Umodel ha'emet, and he always acknowledges the truth. Admits to the truth when the truth is right. V'chilufehen bagolem. And the reverse is about a golem. All the things we just said positively, the golem does it all. Speaks in front of somebody who's wiser than them. They answer things they don't know anything about. They ask questions that are not relevant. That's what a golem is. So, Rabbeinu Rambam, if you click on that Mishnah, it should say commentary. And then you should go to the commentary of the Rambam. Now, the reason why many people don't read the commentary of the Rambam on Pirkei Avot is they don't understand it. The Rambam, before he wrote a commentary on Pirkei Avot, he wrote 8 chapters, or really 9 chapters of introduction to Pirkei Avot. And so you really, oftentimes, as I already explained it to you earlier on, and instead of a running commentary, he expects that you read the book. And some people, that makes them upset. Says Rabbeinu Rambam, is there English there? I'll read it to you in Hebrew. I have Kapach.
You have to scroll down.
Okay. You can follow along in English if you want, and correct me if you're right. Says Rabbeinu Rambam, אני אפרש לך את תחילת השמות. Let me first explain these שמות הללו, these names, החוזרים פעמים רבות בדברי החכמים, which repeat themselves many times in the writings of our חכמים. והם בור, עם הארץ, גולם, חכם, חסיד. בור, what is a בור? הוא האדם שאין בו מעלות הגיוניות ולא מעלות מידותיות, כלומר לא תורה ולא מוסר. וגם טרם נקנו לו תכונות רעות, אלא כאילו הוא ריק מן הטובות והרעות. זהו נקרא בור. And like רחל said, דומה לקרקע שאין זורין בה שום דבר, והיא נקראת בור. So like land that is useless land, this guy has no good to him and no bad to him. He's just a nothing. I guess clod means that. Not the name clod, C-L-O-D. What a person is really something who, he has no logical faculties. He has no good character traits. Also nothing bad, just he's a nothing. He's an empty canvas, a boo. The Am Haaretz, surprisingly, an Am Haaretz is an upgrade from a boo. So we use Am Haaretz, especially in modern spoken Hebrew. Am Haaretz is used very derogatorily. ועם הארץ הוא האדם שיש בו מעלות מידותיות, אבל אין בו מעלות הגיוניות. He's lacking in wisdom, but he definitely has good character. And that's why he's called an עם הארץ, a nation of the land. כלומר, שיש בו דרך ארץ, ואין בו תורה. זהו הנקרא עם הארץ. He has proper character traits, but doesn't have any wisdom of Torah. כלומר, שהוא ראוי ליישוב הארץ וקיבוצי הערים, לפי שיש בו מידות שתיטב בהם חברתו עם זולתו, כמו שביארנו בהקדמת חיבורנו. Anam Haaretz is a person who has good character traits, so he's an upstanding member of society. He has no wisdom of Torah. He's not a Torah scholar, but he's a good person. He makes up the people of the earth that are conducive to society, to building societies. And therefore he's called an Am Haaretz, a person of the land, because he's conducive to the building of the land. The golem, what is a golem? הוא האדם שיש בו מעלות הגיוניות ומידותיות. He has both intellect and character. אלא שאינם בשלמות. Rather, they're not complete yet. ולא סדורות כפי הראוי. And they're all out of order. They're not ordered. They're not structured. אלא שיש בהם בלבול וערבוב ומשהו מן החיסרון. And they're all mixed up. That's why he's called, לפיכך נקרא גולם, דומה לכלי שעושה אומן. ויש בו כבר צורת הכלי, אלא שחסר בו השלמה והשכלול. So he says, imagine a sword or a knife. They're busy making it. It has the sheath, it has the blade, it has all, but it's still warped out of shape. They didn't finish making it yet. It has all the right pieces, but the pieces they don't work yet. A person has all the right things. They have wisdom, they have knowledge, they have good character, but there's nothing complete about them. They're all scattered. They're all over the place. A person knows Torah, they know it, but you see, somebody you talk to a person Torah, they know a lot, but they don't know anything. Why do they know anything? Because all that they have is wrong. Not necessarily that they don't know, but they don't understand any of the context. There's no structure. There was no discipline in the study. And therefore, a golem is like, in Hebrew, you use the word something golmi. It's like a raw, it's in its raw form. It's not yet complete. But it's greater than the Am Haaretz in that it does have intellect and Torah wisdom. What is a Chacham? Chacham hu ha'adam sheniknu lo shne sugei ha'ma'alot b'shlemut u'kefi ha'ra'ui. A Chacham is a person, therefore, who has both wisdom, intellectual faculties, and good character traits. Can you be a Chacham if you're a bad person? No. It doesn't work that way. It's a person who is good and complete in both ways. V'chasid, and what is a chasid? Really, I don't want to get stuck on a chasid today. Chasid is hu ha'adam ha'chacham im hosif b'chasidut. A chasid is a person who is a chacham, but he adds more to it. Klomar b'ma'alot hamidotiyot, not in his wisdom, but in his behavior. Ad shiatem me'at klapei ha'katzeh ha'echad, until he almost becomes extreme in the way in which he is good and kind and careful. Because really the word chesed, chasid, means a surplus. It's an extra of something. We say that somebody is a chasid, it's a person, in modern Jewish study, a chasid is somebody with a fur hat. I'm not talking about that. But the reason why those people took the title chasid is because I do extra. I do more than what is required of me. But like those of you who were in my shiurim many years ago where we studied Mesilat Yesharim of Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato, the same thing you see here, Rabbeinu Rambam, is that a chasid is a person who does more in which capacity? In their behavior, in their character traits. If a chacham is going to act according to the law, the chasid is going to do even more than what the law requires as it relates to you. They're going to be kinder to you. They're going to be more humble than is what is required by law. There's going to be more pious than what is required by law. But not necessarily always a good thing. Chasidut can be bad in the wrong usage. It's also a negative thing. But for right now, what is a bur? A bur is a person who's like, they have nothing. They don't belong here. They're not part of the conversation in the Bedin. So back to the laws of Sanhedrin. I'm going to end with this right now. Rabbeinu Rambam says, wrong Rambam. This Rambam, Rabbeinu Rambam says, "Uminayin ladayan shelo yoshiv Talmud bur lefanav." A person should not place a bur before them. Talmud lomar, midvar sheker tirchak. You should keep away from falsehood. Because of everything we taught earlier, that a student is an integral part of the legal process. It would be a horrible thing if people who were utterly ignorant were involved in the legal process. By the way, I'm going to say something now. Maybe it's an unpopular opinion. In the United States of America, we pride ourselves on our jury system. And our jury system is a better evil than what existed before. The reason we have a jury system here is perhaps to make up for the kangaroo courts of the British. The British had, one guy had all the power, and if you were not British, if you were in some capacity rebelling against the British rule here, they would just kill you. Whatever they decided was law. And so this need to be judged by a jury of my peers became a way to ensure that no one person would have authority or control over other people's lives. What's the downside of a jury? Who ultimately...
Ignorant.
Very good.
The details of the laws.
Who typically decides the fate? It's going to be the people that... Tell me who gets out of jury duty. Okay, who gets out of jury duty?
Smart people.
The smart people. Who else?
People have jobs.
The people who have jobs they actually can't miss. Who else? Ideologues. Okay, who else? Almost anybody who has a good excuse. Almost anybody has a good excuse for why they don't want to be there. And they're not the people who say like, wow, thank you for paying my bus fare. I appreciate that you paid my bus fare. The guy, those people. Okay, health condition. You have people that are exempt from the. So the jury pool ends up being. I'm not. If you've sat on jury, I have some people that ideologically sit in the jury. I'm not here to say something bad about jury duty. I'm here to tell you, you're not necessarily putting your life in the most competent hands in the world. I think about it. Okay, all of you have seen. I have to be careful. My wife is a professor, but I'm sure that all of you have seen the gifts that academia has given us, the next generation of young college students. I'm certain that you are convinced after meeting them and speaking with them that there is no one better in the world that your life should be placed in their care. I'm certain that's how you feel. And being that's the case, I'm sure that you realize that all these people eventually grow up. They're the same people that say stupid things on the news, the same people that say stupid things, the same people that get interviewed for their TikTok and YouTube channels, one day are going to be sitting and deciding whether you shall live or die. It's a frightening thing. You might actually prefer that the judge is the one who makes that decision. And so in our reality of halakha, it's a crime to allow anybody anywhere near the legal process if they're a bull. Because how could you possibly allow for corruption in judgment? Well, who says they're going to corrupt the judgment? Maybe the bur is going to be right. Yeah, maybe the bur is going to be right, but it's a gamble. Midvar sheker tirchak. You must distance yourself from falsehood, not just from falsehood, to keep a distance from it, and to allow people that are ignorant into very important positions of deciding the fate of other human beings is a horrible crime against people. And so here I'm ending on this note. When Rabbeinu Rambam tells us that a teacher, a student, they go to exile together, because those of us who appreciate wisdom, when we are in an environment that does not allow for us to study, it feels like death itself. Now you know that if you feel that way ever in your life, you're not a bull. Because a bull doesn't even begin to understand what they're missing. You know, they say that jellyfish have been around, they're not even fish, but jellyfish have been around for millions of years without brains. And my father disagrees fundamentally on the definition of brain, okay? But they're considered very simple organisms, jellyfish, okay? So they say there's hope for stupid people. They're also going to be around for millions of years without brains. There's hope. We always think that people, how much dumber can you get? Look at the jellyfish. He's still around. At the end of the day, we pride ourselves on not being jellyfish. We are human beings that were gifted with an intellect which is intended to shape our character to be incredible people. And we were talking about the Sanhedrin, not just the teachers on the Sanhedrin, not the rulers of the Sanhedrin, but the people who sit before them and deliberate in judgment. The requirements that we want from them is they should be chachamim. They should be people that are refined not just in their intellect, they're refined in their character. That if I were to say, do I trust this person to decide what is best for my life? The answer should always be a resounding yes. Now we don't have a Sanhedrin. The one request I have from you, you should be the kind of person who says, if I had to put my life in my own hands, because that's what happens every single day. You are your own judge, jury, and executioner. You are your own Sanhedrin every day. Ask yourself the question, am I a chacham? Am I a bull? Am I an am haaretz? Am I a golem? Am I a chassid? Do I trust myself with myself? Have I completed the levels of wisdom, the levels of character refinement in which I feel I'm good to myself? I trust myself with myself. Bezrat Hashem, I bless us that the answer should always be a resounding yes. Thank you so much for learning to help me tonight. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'm here to answer them, but I really, really appreciate learning with you tonight. Thank you so much.